I don't like generative AI. Let me put it that way. I think if you're using it to generate concepts, you're losing the part of the thought process where you get into your characters' heads or you get into the world. You're losing the part of like, why am I doing this? The clone stamp tool in Photoshop is an AI tool. It's
Yeah.
when you
Hmm.
talk about generative AI, I don't see a use for it because to me,
Okay.
it's not giving me anything that I couldn't do.
Hello and welcome to Prolific Perspectives. This is Kamal Hassan, your host and founder of Prolific Animation Studio. Today we have an amazing guest with us, David DePasquale. Hey David, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Good to
Pretty
good to be
good.
here. This is great.
Glad to have you with us. So David, I wanted you to explain or give your brief introduction to our audience so they'll know more about you.
Cool. Oh, so like where I started my artistic journey.
Mhm.
So I grew up on the East Coast of the United States. Originally
Mhm.
from New Jersey.
Mhm.
I went to college for illustration. I actually have no formal animation training whatsoever,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
which is kind of funny. I mean, I did take a couple classes on my own before I got into the industry, but like
Mhm.
not anything, degree wise.
So
Um,
originally you were from the East Coast, New Jersey, and now you're in
yeah.
LA. So there is a big
Now I'm in
difference in
LA.
weather
Oh
because I
yeah.
was there in January. It was horrible, freezing like
Yeah.
anything, right?
It's
30,
actually, it's
16
actually,
inches
yeah.
of snow every day, freeze and all of that. So I hope you're enjoying your weather here in California.
Well, right now, my sister actually lives on the East Coast still, and
Uh-huh.
it's currently snowing where she is, and I'm sitting here, and it's 72 degrees out Fahrenheit,
It
so it's
it
great.
break like 30 years of record of the snowfall this year. I was
Yeah, and
there
apparently
for
record highs on the West Coast, so
So I was there for the in the beginning of this year, and it was like minus like 40, 30 every day, freezing. It was like hard to stand outside.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
My
mhm.
parents got 22 inches of snow where they were in New Jersey, so I know it's crazy. It's
It's
crazy. It's
tough. It's
crazy.
tough. It's tough.
I
Yeah.
know.
So
It's a
go
lot.
on, go
It's
on,
a
go
lot.
on, go on. So you moved from New
Um,
Jersey to the Pacific Coast, LA. So
yeah, yeah,
how's
yeah.
everything?
So
Yeah.
after college, I actually got um uh,
Mm-hmm.
before I moved out, it was about 5 years after I graduated college. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I had gotten like a freelance job
Mm-hmm.
doing like what's called model design for
Mm-hmm.
a Nick Jr. show called The Fresh Beat Band of Spies. I was doing that for about 2 or 3 months. And I kind of
Mm-hmm.
took that as the signal that I was ready to kind of move out and make this, my career full time. Before
Uh-huh.
that, I was working in IT actually. I was working at the Apple Store.
Oh my
So
God.
I was
Okay.
a
Okay.
I was a
So
I was a Genius Bar technician.
I can relate to this because I started a tech company and pursue my passion into the animation industry. So right now I'm
That's
running two
hilarious. Yeah,
different
so
businesses.
same. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was
Uh-huh.
a I was a Genius Bar technician for I was there for 5 years, and then I ended up doing IT for a small museum
Mm-hmm.
up where I was living in Yonkers at the time, and then I moved out to LA, and I kind of worked on my portfolio and stuff, and started looking for jobs for about 6 months, and then I landed a
Mm-hmm.
job at Disney Television Animation as a prop designer, a show called
Okay.
The 7D, and then I kind of haven't really looked back since. I've worked pretty much everywhere, whether freelance or on staff, and I
Mm-hmm.
worked my way up. I'm a little bit of a unicorn. I started off, on prop
Uh-huh.
design, and then obviously went into character design, which is my real passion. And then I
Mm-hmm.
made my way into doing art direction, which was kind of a
Wow.
fluke, I think. Yeah,
Impressive.
it
Uh-huh.
was a little weird.
Impressive.
It was very very
Mm-hmm.
very unexpected because most art directors kind of come from background paint or background design, and rightfully so in a lot of ways because they're used to sort of you know
Mm-hmm.
developing the look of the world, and character designers, um, we're
Mm-hmm.
it's harder for us to, I think, see the bigger picture of things when that's not something that you're so inclined to. So I actually ended up using my
Uh-huh.
illustration skills that I
Mm-hmm.
developed in college,
Uh-huh.
and it paid off. So I ended up
Great.
becoming an art director, and I love it. I love it.
Oh, great, great. So before you were an art director or character designer, who were you as an artist?
That's a loaded question because I don't know if I still know who I am as an artist. I think I'm
Uh-huh.
kind of always evolving. Like, and I know that sounds kind of like a cliche answer, but
Uh-huh.
I'm never really satisfied with my work. I think I'm always evolving as an artist. I'm always kind of redefining who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Some people know me as the tarot guy because I designed two tarot decks
Oh, okay.
on my own. Some people know me as the tiger guy
Mm-hmm.
because I did a plush tiger toy that kind of
Oh,
popped off
great.
a couple
Mm-hmm.
years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Some people know me from art directing, Fight Girl, Invincible Fight Girl over at Cartoon Network. Some people know me for my character design
Mm-hmm.
um, when I was doing stuff on for Netflix, and so I kind of I've kind of been all over the place. I think
Uh-huh.
I like to think of myself as a bit of a chameleon. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an existential crisis of a question. It's like I don't know who I am as an artist, but I'm excited to keep finding out, I guess.
That's the problem with all the artists. They are still figuring it out because they live in a different zone altogether, different
Yeah,
frequency.
totally.
That's how the thought process works with all the artists. So you studied illustration before entering animation. How did classical illustration training shape the way you approach character design for television?
Well, that's actually a great question. When I was, training in illustration, and whether it's editorial or children's books or whatever, like you're trained to take text and make an image, single image,
Hmm.
to tell the story. And I think that really, even though I don't think my execution in the beginning was very good,
Uh-huh.
right now it's even debatable. I know there's a lot of people who are way better at it than I am, but
Uh-huh.
I think training as an illustrator sort of taught me to see the whole
Hmm.
picture, and it really put the focus primarily on story for me. And even
Hmm.
though I'm not a story artist, um,
Hmm.
the story is still the most important thing. So whether I'm developing,
Hmm.
character, or I'm doing visual development, or I'm doing production design for a series that's in development, like everything comes down to the story. So I start
Hmm.
from there. I guess in that case, I'm a very story focused artist. Like everything I do, the story comes first. Sometimes I write first before I even put my
Correct.
pen on my Cintiq or a pen on paper. For
Hmm.
me, it's the story is the most important. It's
Hmm.
a thing you can't live without in animation. You need the story.
Absolutely. So you started as a prop designer at Disney. What did designing objects teach you about storytelling before you ever touched a character?
I'm actually really grateful that I started out in prop design because I think it taught me to be a better character designer because I approached props like characters. Because it's one thing to kind of like,
Hmm.
design pencil, but whose pencil is it? What's
Yeah.
the environment like? And it's something as simple
Hmm.
as like something you write with. Well, my Cintiq pen
Hmm.
has like a grip on it because I need a thicker grip when I draw, and somebody
Uh-huh.
else's Cintiq pen might be missing their button, and
Oh.
somebody else might have a color
Uh-huh.
grip on
Hmm.
their pen.
Hmm.
And I think at the end of the day, it taught me like what is the function, like what is the purpose of the story,
Hmm.
like the prop's purpose in the story, and
Hmm.
whose prop is it, whose cup of coffee is it. I'm going to
Uh-huh.
order something completely different at a coffee shop
Uh, uh-huh.
than my partner, or than the lady ahead of me or the guy behind me. And they're all
Hmm.
going to kind of match our personalities in a way. So I like my coffee. I'm from New York. I spent a lot of
Hmm.
time in New York. I'm
Uh-huh.
from the East Coast or from the tri-state area, and I like my coffee light and sweet. Always half and half in sugar and
Yeah.
and coffee, unless I'm drinking Italian coffee, in which case I will take my espresso black, or with a little
Yeah.
sugar.
Hmm.
But I know
Hmm.
people that just love, they gotta have their caramel macchiatos in the morning, and I know some people that scoff at me because I don't drink my coffee black all the time. So uh, when it comes down
Hmm.
to it, it's like approaching props as an
Uh-huh.
extension of the character
Hmm.
is basically how I was taught and how I was trained to do it. So it was just
Uh-huh.
a natural extension of character design in my world, how I was taught. So
Uh-huh.
that was a big that was a huge like sort of training wheels, I think, for me as a like it was
hmm
definitely training wheels for me as a character designer, doing props. There are some people who do, props, that's their entire job, and they're brilliant at it. I mean, I think props are an often
hmm
overlooked, uh, especially in television animation. There's some incredible prop designers out there, and a lot of them do effects animation too. And man, but I think just from my perspective,
hmm
like viewing them as designing them and viewing them as extensions of characters, I think helped me the most. It really helped train my eye and it helped train my brain.
Since you brought this up, the training and the time, so I want to ask you another question here that's going to relate to the answer that you just gave me. What was the hardest phase of your early career that nobody sees on IMDb?
The hardest phase of my early career was definitely that first
Uh
job.
huh.
I think
Uh
I don't
huh.
think necessarily from a skills perspective. Like I think, of course, you want to make sure that you know, your skills always develop. I think over the course of your career, I don't think your skills ever stop developing. But I think
hmm
the hardest thing for me was the mental like
Uh huh.
switch I had to make from, working in retail or working in IT or working wherever
hmm hmm
to this full-time job. Like I am a I'm an artist professionally now. I'm a creative
hmm
professional. Like what does that even mean? Like who am I? Like am I part
hmm
of this big machine? I'm part of this big machine. I work at
Uh
Disney.
huh.
Like oh my God,
Uh huh.
and I think the mental,
hmm
I don't want to say anguish, but the mental hurdle of
hmm
like switching your brain to operating on a creative level like full time is pretty wild. And there's
Uh
a lot
huh.
of self-doubt. There's a lot of, I mean, I still have self-doubt, but like there's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of times where you're like, I'm gonna get fired. Like I can't do this job. I can't do it. Like they hired me by accident. And I think kind
Uh
of
huh.
getting over that and
Uh huh.
realizing that um, it's a collaborative environment. It's you're not there on your own. You're not
hmm
there like you're solving this grand problem of the production you're working on. It is in its essence a creative problem that you're trying to solve with a group of people. Um,
hmm
and I think sort of learning how to like frame it that way as opposed to like
hmm
I am just the prop designer. I'm doing all this on my own with no
hmm
help. And if I go ask a question, I'm going to look stupid, and
hmm
it's going to prove that I didn't know how to do my job. And it's like, no, it's none
hmm
of that. I think that mental switch was, I think, really the toughest for me. And it's something that I try to. I mean, I teach as well, and it's
hmm
something that I really try to impart on my students, where it's like you're allowed to ask questions. You're
hmm
allowed to do these things. You're allowed to.
hmm
It's okay. It's okay to be a little unsure of yourself at first. Like it's a collaborative environment. You're
Absolutely.
supposed to talk.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to talk to people. You're supposed to show
Absolutely.
people. You're supposed to
hmm
get
hmm
feedback. You're supposed to. It's all you're working with people. You're not working next to people.
So, what's a creative mistake you made early in your career that shaped you permanently?
Oh, that shaped me permanently. That's a really
hmm
damn. These questions are great. Like, uh, they're really making me think.
hmm
It shaped me permanently. I think it's probably tied to my last
hmm
something in my last response where it's just like I have to keep
hmm
remembering that I'm not alone in this. And I think especially as you grow over the course of your career, like certain positions bring with them a certain kind of loneliness if you're not careful. I think especially once you get up into the supervisory roles, the director roles, it's really easy to sort of sit there and be like, oh, I'm the guy that makes the decisions now. Like I can't ask a question. I'm gonna look stupid. Like it's the same response that you get when you're
Yeah.
when you're just starting out, but like it's the same
uh-huh.
answer. It's the same fears. It's just on a completely different level. Where you're like, well, if I don't know how to do
Uh-huh.
this, like I'm the guy that's supposed to know how to do this. What do you mean I don't know how to do this? And I think
Okay.
I do have to constantly.
What is one career risk that paid off well?
Oh, I got this. I can't go into too much detail because it's not released yet. But when I was art directing on Golden Axe, I had a great mentor, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
who really helped me through this. He warned
Uh-huh.
me. He was the he is the CCO of Titmouse. His name's Antonio Canobio, and I've worked
Mm-hmm.
with him multiple times. And
Uh-huh.
he's somebody who gives me a good gut check when I need it and good support when I
Mm-hmm.
when I need it as well. Like he's really great to bounce stuff off of. But when I was developing Golden Axe, I had this very
Mm-hmm.
particular idea for what I wanted the show to look like. And the way that I art direct is just based on the show. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have a particular style in which you hire me to art direct something. Like, I always take into account like what the show needs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, Golden Axe was made in the
Mm-hmm.
80s. That's when like Meatloaf was popular, when Frazetta was a thing, like video
Mm-hmm.
game box art, all that stuff. And while I can't go into too much detail what the show looks like, I could say that
Uh-huh.
all of these things were used as major references, and I had a very particular idea what I wanted the show to look like, and it was completely
Mm-hmm.
different than the show that I
Ah.
had previously art directed, which was Invincible Fight Girl at Cartoon Network.
Uh-huh.
And I pitched this idea to Antonio, and he was like, "I don't know, man." He was like, "That's a
Uh-huh.
lot of work, and
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
you're asking people to do a lot, and you're asking a lot of yourself. Like, are you prepared for this?" And I was like, "Well, we have to figure out how to do this without blowing the budget." So I took a very calculated risk
Mm-hmm.
by developing the show to look the way it does, and I think it paid off. I love it. I think it looks great. That is, I wouldn't say that it's solely because of me. I had an incredibly talented, we had an incredibly
Mm-hmm.
talented team. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of guidance. It was a very big group effort, but that was probably the
Mm-hmm.
biggest calculated risk I've ever made in my career. Where I was like,
Uh-huh.
if
Uh-huh.
I'm not right in my, like
Mm-hmm.
assertions, like I am screwing everybody over because it's like I will blow
Ah.
the budget, we
Mm-hmm.
won't get the show done. I'll be wasting a lot of people's time and money. Like the whole team will be mad at me. Like I took a very calculated risk. And thank
Mm-hmm.
God, forehead wipe, it paid off. I think it came out great. And, mm,
So if
I mean, part
someone
of that was hiring the
if
right people. So
so if someone studied your portfolio without seeing your name, what design trait would give away that it's yours?
I think the approach to the story, like I have a particular personal style. So it's like if you look at my, my work and how I develop my characters and stuff, you could see a through line. Like I know I have a recognizable style.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you were to just sort of look at my portfolio in general, like, oh, Golden Axe and Fight Girl and, all the stuff that I've done for,
Mm-hmm.
development and production over the years, like the biggest
Mm-hmm.
thing that I do is storytelling through characters. Like I don't like drawing characters static. I'm not very
Mm-hmm.
good at the technical. I would say I'm not very good at the technical side of things. Yes, I could do it.
Okay.
Yes, I correct it. Like I can do it. I don't like doing it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to draw characters in situations. I prefer to draw characters acting. I prefer to draw
Mm-hmm.
characters reacting to something. So for me, the biggest
Mm-hmm.
through line, whenever you see a piece of mine or a set of characters or some level of development
Mm-hmm.
work, like it's always the characters doing something. Like there's always
Mm-hmm.
storytelling in it, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
just a single character on a white background of a page. It's like
Mm-hmm.
they're always doing something. Like there's always a story behind it, even if it's just a single sentence or, it's like, oh, this character's mad at their cat.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
there's always a story behind it. I think that's my through line.
So
That's where
so
I'm the
so
strongest.
so across Invincible Fight Girl, Golden Axe, and Central Park, what visual philosophy quietly connects all of your work?
It's interesting about when you bring up Central Park because I was luckily on that show for a little bit of time doing some freelance, and um, it actually challenged me because it's a more structured show than I'm
Mm-hmm.
used to, and I had to really I had to really hone in on my technical skills for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think again for me, it's always like, where's the funny? Where's the story? Where's
Mm-hmm.
can I slip in something a little funnier? Can I slip in something a little bit more specific?
Mm-hmm.
Specificity for me is always the biggest thing. It's like, what is specific about this character? And
Mm-hmm.
regardless of style, I think, anytime I touch something, like I'm always trying to make something more specific, more
Mm-hmm.
funny, more specific, more attached to the story. So
correct.
Yeah, that was
So
true
how do
on
you
That was true on Arlo. That was true all over the place. So
all right. So how do you approach adapting your design style to match the tone and DNA of a show while still keeping your artistic voice alive?
I think being trained in television animation as a character designer means I've had to be a bit of a chameleon style wise. But the principles of design that I mean, I teach. This is what I teach.
Mm-hmm.
My students, and the principles of design are not just visual. It's
Mm-hmm.
emotional. It's um, again, it's that storytelling. It's that specificity.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it doesn't matter if I'm working in a different style.
Uh-huh.
It's the specificity of acting. It's the choices and storytelling that I do. It's all that stuff that's my through line. Everything that if I touch a character, I have to understand their personality. I have to understand what's going
Mm-hmm.
on in their head. I have to, you know, and I like doing what they call special poses, which is
Mm-hmm.
usually keyframes for the animators, like reference
Mm-hmm.
for the animators.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anytime I could push the model, anytime I could stretch the model, anytime I can, make the character do something out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
That's my jam. I love that stuff. Even though it is a different style, like Arlo was a different style than Central Park, and Stillwater was a
Mm-hmm.
different style than
Mm-hmm.
Invincible Fight Girl, and Golden Axe was a different style than all of them. It's just the through line is
So in
the
comedy driven
storytelling is the through line.
shows like Central Park versus something more action forward like Invincible Fight Girl, how does shape language change?
Oh, I mean, well, you have one's a sitcom, right? So Central Park's a sitcom, and I think that they're more grounded in reality, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean like they're literally more ground. It's like The Simpsons or Family Guy or Bob's Burgers is one of my favorite shows of all time. Like I adore that show, and they're more grounded in reality. It is an animated sitcom, so the way you push the models is different. The kinds of things you make the characters do is different, and they're typically going to be closer to the
Mm-hmm.
model, and you're just going to put them in funny situations and you're going to make them react in a funny way. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
something like Invincible Fight Girl requires a much more extreme application of squash and stretch. It requires a much more extreme application of breaking the model.
Mm-hmm.
That particular show is hand drawn. So with
Okay.
Fight Girl, like that show is like one of the things that we really wanted was the hand of the animator. We wanted to break the model. We
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that, yes,
Mm-hmm.
there was a design to Andy, there was a design to all these characters, but there was a little bit of wiggle room there where it allowed us to kind of like play with the model like there was a range where we could play with the model.
Okay. Okay.
And I say the range is less in a
Mm-hmm.
show like Central Park or Bob's or even Stillwater or
Mm-hmm.
anything that's kind of like more serious or a
Mm-hmm.
situational comedy. Like Bob's is extremely funny. Central Park is extremely funny,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
there's not as much squash and stretch and stuff like that in there. So your
Mm-hmm.
character silhouettes have to be super clear. They have to be
Mm-hmm.
very like you have to be
Mm-hmm.
really sure about what you're looking at.
Yeah.
You have to be
Mm-hmm.
really sure about what you're doing. Like if you drop Bob into silhouette and he's at the
Mm-hmm.
grill flipping burgers, you have to make sure that you can understand that that's what he's doing. So
Absolutely.
I think
Mm-hmm.
shape language has to be super simple and super clear in those shows.
Yeah.
And then I think
Mm-hmm.
it's something like Fight Girl, like you have the ability to push the model and do a lot of squash and stretch with that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a different application of silhouette. It's a different application of, gesture and, line of action and all that kind of stuff.
So,
So, I mean, shape comes into play for both of them.
when you first saw the character from Fight Girl fully animated, what did you feel as a designer?
I mean, well, I didn't design. First of all, I didn't design Andy.
Okay,
I'd
you
say
didn't. Okay,
Justin. I did not. No, 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 no. I
okay.
actually came on that production. So the timeline of Fight Girl it was actually the perfect show to begin my career
Mm-hmm.
as an art director.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Gordon Montgomery is the man who created and EP'd that show. Um, he was the one that designed Andy, and a lot of our
Mm-hmm.
character designs came from a brilliant character designer named Fabien Mentz. He's a French
Mm-hmm.
character designer, and I did some of the designs. So like I designed young Aunt P, I designed young Barong. I did a couple other, like I
Mm-hmm.
designed Mikey's dad and his mom, and so I did like a couple, wrestler
Mm-hmm.
incidental wrestler designs. But my job on that production was to
Mm-hmm.
take what they did with the pilot that they
Uh-huh.
did before, which I was not the art director on.
Okay.
Um, it was take that pilot, understand what Justin
Mm-hmm.
wanted to keep from it and what he wanted to enhance, and
Mm-hmm.
then develop something visually that was A, animatable, and B, um, tonally what Justin was looking for. So I would say that show was probably like 75% of the way there already. So
Wow.
um it's like I was taking over in season two. So I
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of development on my part,
Mm-hmm.
and I helped develop Andy's hometown, her island. I did a lot of visual
Mm-hmm.
development for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the Rustburn where they travel to next. So like I did a lot of location
Mm-hmm.
development, um, and I did some incidental characters and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, the what it still kind of like made me cry
Uh-huh.
when I saw her first animated, because it
Uh,
was like,
uh-huh.
oh man, this is real. Because I think the special thing about that show was
Uh-huh.
that was our love letter to shonen anime, and that's how I
Wow.
grew up on that.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
that was what really held me into wanting to do this for a living to begin with. Like I was obsessed with Dragon Ball as a kid. I was obsessed with Boy Bebop and Inuyasha and Hunter x Hunter and
Oh. Uh-huh.
Trigun, all
Trigun.
that
Wow.
stuff.
Oh.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Trigun's incredible, but like
It is.
everything, like
Uh, mm-hmm.
watching, seeing some of those initial scenes come back,
Uh-huh.
and you know, watching her move and watching sort of like our experiment of making an
Mm.
American shonen kind of come to life. It was like, oh man,
Wow.
think we did it. Like I think we did it, man. Like we did it, guys. Like this is crazy. Like it feels like an anime. It
Uh-huh.
feels like
Mm-hmm.
we got all the ingredients. It's actually more Western looking
Mm-hmm.
than most animes, I think. But the tone
Mm-hmm.
and the approach to storyboarding, the approach to writing, the approach to sort of inner monologues, and how we use the fight scenes to propel the plot, like all that stuff is
Mm-hmm.
we studied so much. Like the approach to animation, how we
Mm-hmm.
we dropped we dropped frames until it was really important to
Mm-hmm.
animate the important fight sequences that propelled the story. Like we saved our pennies to
Uh-huh.
use there instead. So I think
Uh-huh.
watching it kind of come back and be like, oh my god, like we did it, like this is crazy,
Uh-huh.
like oh my
It
god, we
is.
did it. So it was a huge celebration. It was pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
I
Great.
I will
Mm-hmm.
always have a special place in my heart for that show. Like it was the first time where
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I sat, I stood there with my hands on my hips, like watching the stuff come
Mm-hmm.
in. Like, oh, did did we do this? Like, am I a part of this? This is crazy. Like, I would have like had to pinch myself if
Uh,
I was a kid right now, saying,
uh-huh.
seeing this would be nuts. So
Great.
it
Great.
was
So
lots of
so
pride.
so great. So Golden Axe is a legendary arcade title. When adopting such an iconic game into an animated series, where do you even begin visually?
Oh well, I think back at square one. I mean, the thing that I was challenged to do on Golden Axe was there wasn't really much art to begin with at all. They had like a couple little like
Mm-hmm.
they had sent out to people, but nothing was kind
Mm-hmm.
of really hidden anything. So I ended up starting from square one. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think if I didn't have the experience on Fight Girl where I had like taken the show to finish, like it set me up really well for now starting
Mm-hmm.
the show from the beginning. Like I had, again, it was like my training wheels. And then I got onto
Mm-hmm.
Golden Axe, and um, I mean, I was a child of the 90s. I had young parents. I played video
Mm-hmm.
games with my parents as a kid, especially my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, back in the early 90s and late 80s, and like all those arcade machines, um, you had to rely on box art to tell you what
Yeah.
thing is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to look like, right? So you had
Yeah.
16-bit, 16-bit
Mm-hmm.
on CRT TVs. So
Oh.
there
Mm-hmm.
was a level of like, well, it doesn't in your mind picture this, like
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that when I was brought on, one of the things that
Mm-hmm.
I pitched was, well, what were they looking at? What were the
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things that they were looking at when they were developing the game to begin with? So the guy who created Golden Axe um,
Mm-hmm.
took inspiration from a lot of things. I mean, he took inspiration from Conan the Barbarian, from Mansonia, from um,
Mm-hmm.
Middle Earth, and Lord of the Rings, and he kind of mushed them all together and created this beautiful game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I started there. I
Okay.
obviously played the game. I downloaded it on my phone. I
Mm-hmm.
played the game again. But I had to remember that back in '89, like video game graphics weren't as advanced, so box
Yeah,
art was a
they
huge
weren't.
business.
Yeah, it
Um,
was.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, yeah. So now technology and cartoons have come a long way. I mean, so
Absolutely.
how do we like the one thing that I really wanted to do is capture the charm and the vibe from that era and bring it into
Mm-hmm.
the modern day, but still have that since that soul be of the '89 video game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So when redesigning characters that gamers already know, what's the line between homage and reinvention?
I think that there is like understanding who the characters are, like what their soul is really important. I think for specifically those three from Golden Axe, Axe, Terrace, and Gilius, like they have certain properties to them. Like Axe, his name is
Mm-hmm.
Axe, but he uses a sword,
Okay.
and he looks
Okay.
like Arnold. He has like
Uh-huh.
Arnold Schwarzenegger vibes to him. Like
Uh-huh.
Tyrus is this '80s bombshell, like
Mm-hmm.
strong fire user. Um, and Gilius is this dwarf who wields an axe, and he has a beard and he's got a helmet and he's got like so
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things. This is kind of like it's kind of like making fan art, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I make fan art professionally. When I'm developing an IP, I'm developing something that exists already. It's like I'm basically
Mm-hmm.
creating my own fan art that's going to end up on television, which is crazy. But that's how I look at it. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this has happened throughout history. You could look at
Mm-hmm.
stuff from ancient Egypt, and if I tell somebody like,
Mm-hmm.
can you draw Anubis for me? Like, you have to go and look up what properties Anubis has. Like, he has the black jackal
Mm-hmm.
head. He
Mm-hmm.
wears the golden collar with the gems. He always carries an ankh. He ferries.
Mm-hmm.
He takes souls to their judgment, and he
Mm-hmm.
was the god of mummification. And if you look at other
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know I'm a huge fan of like theology and eschatology and like human myths and legends and stuff throughout
Mm-hmm.
the course of human anthropology. And um, I'm always looking at stuff from the past. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like when you're doing like back then, it didn't matter what
Mm-hmm.
style you drew those gods
Uh-huh.
or myths in. They always had to fit a certain set of properties. So I approach it
Mm-hmm.
the same way, where it's like, okay, Axe is this kind of fighter. This is how he
Mm-hmm.
moves in the game. These are the kinds of weapons
Uh-huh.
he uses. This is the kind of clothing he wears. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
with Tyrus, same thing with Gilius. So I had to make sure that the characters were recognizable, but at the same time, like we couldn't just up-res the 16-bit and then just stick them in a show. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they move differently in the show. Like there's homages to the game,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
this is a full animated production. It's not a pose to pose 16-bit side scroller. So,
Uh-huh.
but to me, it's the same thing. It's like taking, it's like
Mm-hmm.
in Catholic art. Like I grew up, Catholic. Like John the
Mm-hmm.
Baptist always wears furs, and it's like, or in any in Indian, in Hindu myths, like
Mm-hmm.
Garuda is
Uh, uh-huh.
always an eagle head. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
Garuda if he was different. Like
Yeah.
it's
So another question for you that I wanted to ask you here was creating and selling your own tarot decks a strategic entrepreneurial decision or a purely artistic one?
purely artistic. I was a complete fluke. I did it when I was designing my tarot decks. I designed the first one in 2017, and I was just doing like ink and marker drawings for Inktober. Like I was literally sitting at a timeshare in Orlando, Florida, with my godson and his parents and his sister.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're very close, family friends of mine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I have to do my Inktober, and I drew like just a devil because I had a red alcohol marker and
Mm-hmm.
just a brush pen, and I did this devil, this drawing of this goat devil, and I posted it on my Facebook when I had one at the time. And my
Mm-hmm.
best friend who was super into tarot was like, "Is this how you're doing your tarot deck?" And I was like, "Well, it is now."
Uh-huh.
So I ended up taking like the rest of October to do the major arcana, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of fun." And then I kind of
Mm-hmm.
gauged interest. I was like, do people want to see a full deck? And I kind of got a little bit of a stir. So I ended up doing a
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter, and um,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up creating a whole deck. I wrote a book. And
Mm-hmm.
then a couple years later, during the pandemic, my former literary agent,
Mm-hmm.
he helped he helped sell
Mm-hmm.
the deck to Hay House, which was a
Oh.
division of Penguin Random
Mm-hmm.
House. And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up pitching a second deck to them, like, hey, this would be fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like the myths and legends and the storytellers deck. And they
Mm-hmm.
bought that too. So I was like, I completely fell
Oh,
into it. Like
great.
it was not like I'm gonna create my own tarot deck. Like this is how I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna do it. Like I'm gonna sell so many. It was completely
Mm-hmm.
like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of luck in my career. Let me put it that way. Like
It's hard
there's
work.
a
It's
lot of
hard work as
yeah.
well at the same time. Yeah.
It is.
It's
You
it.
know,
I would say it's
luck.
never a luck. It's hard work at the end of the day.
Well,
So
I would say luck favors the prepared. So at the very
absolutely,
least, like
I agree.
like
Uh-huh.
as
So, as
someone.
someone rooted in illustration and character design, what part of the creative process feels most human to you?
Oh, I mean, again, the acting. I mean, I think that's kind of why I'm so drawn to doing, acting poses, and when I do development, like I'm always designing the characters doing something. Like to me, that's it. Like one of
Mm-hmm.
the examples that I give,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I'm going to get some, perhaps this is an unpopular opinion or a controversial
Mm-hmm.
opinion, but in my character design class, I have my students watch the quote unquote live action version of a
Mm-hmm.
Disney movie.
Wow.
Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I won't say which one. I won't say which one. And then I have them watch the same sequence from the animated version, and I ask them like, which one feels more. I don't say anything. I just say which one
Crazy.
feels
Uh-huh.
more real. Which one feels
Mm-hmm.
more real to you? And it's
Uh-huh.
inevitably always the animated one. And that's not saying that live action movies can't
Mm-hmm.
do that. I think that
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of live action movies that are deeply emotional and feel very
Mm-hmm.
real. And, there's some of my favorite movies of all time are live action,
Mm-hmm.
but I think when it comes to animation, like you have to turn everything up to 11. Like
Mm-hmm.
you also have this runway that's a little bit different than a live action movie. Like
Mm-hmm.
Howard Ashman, who is the lyricist for who worked with Alan
Mm-hmm.
Menken, in the sort of early days of the Disney Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
He worked on Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. He and Howard Ashman did Little Shop of Horrors before he got into
Mm-hmm.
animation, but he had this brilliant, um,
Mm-hmm.
explanation that theater and animation have this sort of special thing that the
Mm-hmm.
audience comes in with an automatic suspension of disbelief. So
Yeah.
it's up to you to create the rules, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you're creating those rules, you are creating the parameters that people will view whenever they're
100%.
watching it. So like for example, like a
Mm-hmm.
Bob's Burgers, it's a
Mm-hmm.
more sort of grounded in reality thing, whereas something like Invincible Fight Girl, it's like we had to create the rules of the wrestling world. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
fantastical stuff here. There's a level of like superpower that comes with it, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody in the world is a wrestler. Even the Earth doesn't look the same. So there's all these rules that you have to create, and it forces you to, it's going to sound super cheesy, but it forces you
Mm-hmm.
to look at everything from what I refer to as a feelistic way and not a realistic
Uh-huh.
way. So
Uh-huh.
you're drawing you're designing and drawing and animating how things feel, not how they look,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is different.
Correct.
It's a
Makes sense.
it's a
Mm-hmm.
different approach, you know.
It is.
So that's kind of how I approach that.
Correct. So, where do you see AI fitting into visual development workflows as a tool, a threat, or both?
If you're talking generative AI, that to me, I hate to come off with a level of hubris here, but I don't see it as a threat at all.
I agree with you 100%.
I don't see it
It's
as a
for
tool
it's for
either.
those who are not taking command on generative AI because that's going to help
Yeah,
us
I
anyway in
think
the future. Uh-huh.
well, I actually I don't agree with that either.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Hmm.
I don't I don't like AI.
Okay.
I think
Hmm.
that I don't like generative AI. Let me put it that way. I think
Okay.
when people say like, is AI a tool? Yes, AI is a tool when you're talking about
It is.
things like the clone
Mm-hmm.
stamp and you're talking about things like, oh, we have a crowd shot here. We
Mm-hmm.
can program like, six different walk cycles and then, we
Mm-hmm.
can then push it out to 1,000 different characters and have the AI kind of vary where those walk cycles are. That's not generative
Mm-hmm.
AI. That's stuff that we've been doing for years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The clone stamp tool in Photoshop is an AI tool. It's
Yeah.
when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about generative AI, I
Mm-hmm.
don't see a use for it because to me,
Okay.
um, and I know that that's a controversial opinion when it comes to technology, but
Mhm.
to me, it's not giving me anything that I couldn't do. Like
Okay.
for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm not looking for a shortcut here. Like
Okay.
the
Mm.
creating art or creating characters is not about the end product for me. It's about my
Okay.
thought process throughout the whole thing. So development, if you're just using AI to generate development work, well, you're not actually
Mm-hmm.
doing the development part. You're
Mm-hmm.
just seeing what the
Mm-hmm.
entire like bulk of animation history that's currently uploaded to the internet. Like you're just feeding it through a blender and then you're telling it to
Yeah.
spit something out that it thinks is correct. And the thing that I
Mm-hmm.
have to caution everybody is that generative AI is objective.
Okay.
It's looking for the right answer,
Makes
and
sense. Mm-hmm.
there is no such thing as the right answer in art. There are things that work better than others. There is
Uh-huh.
a best answer
Mm-hmm.
for the time that you're developing it in the situation you're developing something in, but there is no right answer. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if you're using it to generate concepts,
Uh-huh.
you're losing the part of the thought process where you get into specificity. You lose the part of the thought
Absolutely.
process where you get into
Mm-hmm.
your characters' heads, or you get into the world, why you're designing the way the world.
Mm-hmm.
You're losing the part of like, why am I doing this? Why am I developing it this way? As opposed to,
Absolutely.
well, I just need a
Absolutely.
couple. I just need a
I
couple,
in fact
pieces.
actually experienced this myself. If you destroy your thought process when you get too much into AI tools and stuff, so you don't know what you're doing. You're just typing stuff, and you destroyed
Exactly.
everything. Yeah, I get it. So that makes
Exactly.
sense, 100%.
I think I
Mm-hmm.
I think in not to
Mm-hmm.
get philosophical here, but it's just like I think society right now, like everything is done at an
Mm-hmm.
accelerated pace. Everything is done like we
Yeah.
need this thing now. We need it to be finished now. We need it to be on the air now.
Mm-hmm.
We need it to be on the internet now.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just like you're talking about a tool that's already distilling
Mm-hmm.
things down to a common denominator, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
getting the hand, even if you're telling it to draw it like somebody, like I want to design, Golden Axe in the style of,
Yeah.
David's work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but my thought process isn't present there. It's just my
Yeah.
execution. So
Absolutely.
you're missing 80% of what I go through when I'm actually making a
Absolutely.
piece. Like
Yeah.
you're not seeing the mistakes that I'm making. You're not seeing the aha moments that, if a mistake that I'm making, oh my God, actually works, like my, lucky breaks in some cases where it's just like, oh, I didn't think that would work, but I'm glad I tried it. Well, you're just regurgitating the lowest common denominator of my executions. You're not actually using my thought process. You're not using, all of my decisions in that output. So I think that's kind of where it falls flat and why a lot of AI stuff ends up looking the same,
Hmm.
because it's just it's kind of like
Uh-huh.
it's
Uh-huh.
stupid metaphor, but it's like I liken it to making a strawberry like smoothie. Like you're
It makes sense.
putting
Yeah. Hmm.
like you're putting a bunch of strawberries and yogurt and blueberries or whatever. Like you're putting all that stuff in a blender and you're mixing it up and you have something that doesn't look like a strawberry but tastes like a strawberry, like is it's flavored
Hmm.
a certain way, but you
Hmm.
don't see how the farmer who grew those strawberries, you don't see the
Yeah.
way that the soil he uses, you don't see the
Hmm.
mistakes that he made over the last 30 years to get the strawberries to taste this sweet at this time of
That's
year.
deep.
You don't,
That's deep. Yeah.
like but that's true. That's what it is. It's like you
Yeah.
don't see the
Hmm.
process. You're not getting the process. You're just concerned about the taste of the
Hmm.
smoothie at the end. And it's just like, well, but there's a reason I chose to use these strawberries. There's a reason I chose to use full fat yogurt and not non-fat yogurt. But you're telling me that non-fat yogurt's healthier, so I should do. I'm like, no, I don't want. It's not about healthy for me. It's like I want the taste of this.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something specific. So
Makes sense.
if you're
Hmm.
not seeing the experimentation, you're not seeing the artistic process. Like art is the creation. It's not the end product. It's the whole thing. So
Absolutely.
I think that's kind of where there's this little bit of mm, miscommunication, I think, with specifically with the technology side of things. It's like it's so cool. It's like, well, to
Hmm.
me it just kind of is a nice little parlor trick. Like it can do something. Like it's cool that it can
Hmm.
generate an image, but to me it's just like, well, where's the thought process? Where's the rest of it? And
Great.
that's my primary function, is the thought. Where I That's the soul of my art, is the thought process. So I don't see a use case in my own life, because or in my
Hmm.
own artistic process, because it just doesn't do the things that I need it to do, because my brain does it already and it does it faster. So
Makes sense. Makes sense. Absolutely.
you know
Hmm. So
I'm not
coming to
against AI
my
in general.
okay.
I'm not
So
against
how
AI. I'm
should
not against AI in general. So like generative AI, yes, but AI itself, no. There's, of course, there's a lot of use cases for that, but generative AI, I don't see it as a
Mhm.
threat, and I just don't see it being a part of the pipeline the way that people think it's going to be. Like it just,
Correct.
at
So
least for more bespoke stuff.
how should young designers protect their originality in an era of algorithm-driven aesthetics?
I think you need to stop caring about the algorithm. Like I think, maybe this is like an old man yelled at cloud, like take for me, but I think, a lot of people chase the algorithm. And the thing that I always encourage my students to do is you need to approach your art. Like, yes, of course you want a job. I get it. I want a job too. Like everybody wants like you would be in the fine arts if were
Yeah.
100% like,
Hmm.
talking about doing things without compromise. And
Hmm.
there's merit in that too. But I think when it comes down to, people who want to do art for public consumption, like
Hmm.
at the end of the day, like you're still making things that you want to make, and you still need to make things that make you happy. And I think if you're constantly chasing the algorithm, you've lost your sense. You're again allowing a machine to dictate what you draw.
Correct.
And
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
I think at the end of the day, like there's a reason K-pop Demon Hunters is so popular right now, is because it has a very specific like
Hmm.
viewpoint. It comes from a very specific place in the director's heart. And um, I could go into how maybe some studios didn't think it'd be very successful, which is why they didn't release it in theaters and why they sold it to Netflix or so and so. But um,
Makes sense. Hmm.
if you're, I tell my students this all the time, like I know you're spending money to go here, and I know you're sitting here listening to me for 3 hours every single week talk an industry that is, quite frankly, kind of on fire right now, and not in a good way. But if the industry collapsed tomorrow and
Hmm.
you could not make a single penny doing
I
this
agree. 100%.
again for the rest of your life, would you still draw? And if the answer is yes, then I'm like, great, what would you draw? Like,
Yeah.
do that. Do that. Forget the money,
Yeah.
forget the, like obviously I need to pay my rent, I need to live, I need to afford groceries. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, like the things that resonate the most with people and the things that will
Hmm.
eventually get a lot of attention are the things that mean most to you and really do mean the most, to you as an artist. Like
Hmm.
there's plenty of
So
artists throughout
coming,
history, you know.
coming to my last question. So if you could give one piece of advice to your 22-year-old self graduating from Fed, what would it be?
Oh geez. I have a lot to say to that guy. I would definitely I think that it connects to what I just said, which is like, man, you just need to draw what you want to draw. Like
Hmm.
you can't don't chase the what you think all the studios want. Don't chase, the art, like creating your own art of book as a
Hmm.
portfolio. Don't try to be any other artist other than what you do and who you are and your thought process. Like it's gonna take time. You gotta be patient. And if I could tell them like just stop trying to be like anybody other than yourself. Like, that
Great.
once you care so much that you don't care, that
Yeah.
like, and I say that like, a level of,
Hmm.
a level of humor here, but it's just like I care so much about what I make that I don't care what other people think about it. I just make work, and if people like it, then they like it, and if they don't, that's their opinion. Like, or that's what I mean when I said like
Hmm.
AI is objective. Well, art is a subjective medium. Like everybody's always
It
going to have
is.
opinion about it. There's people out there that don't like K-pop Demon Hunters. Like I'm not one of them. I
Hmm.
love that movie, but like there's people out there that don't like The Nightmare Before Christmas. There's people out there that don't like the new Gorillaz music video that
Hmm.
just came out that I think is one of the most brilliant pieces of art that have come out in the last recent history. But
Uh-huh.
um, like there will be people who don't like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and
There are.
Caravaggio and all these, like there's people out there who don't like
Hmm.
Van Gogh. There's people out there who don't like Monet. There's people out there who don't like
Yeah.
Degas. There's people out there who don't like
Hmm.
Disney. There's people out there that don't like you know Snow White. There's people out there that don't like all sorts of things. Adventure Time. Like, but
Yeah.
it wasn't made for everybody. Those things weren't
Yeah.
made for
It wasn't.
everybody. Those things were made for the people who like them. And even though you don't know that audience, there will be people that like it. If you have an opinion, if you just try
Yeah.
to make something for everybody, nobody's going to like it because you're not making it with a point of view and you're not making it with an opinion. So I always try to make things with a point of view now, even if it's just a stupid little drawing. Like, well, it's my stupid little drawing. It's for me first of all. It's for me first of all, and then whoever
Hmm.
likes it is great. That's icing on the cake. But at the end of the day, like when I draw for myself.
Absolutely.
And I'm always putting a spin on things. So that's what I would tell them. I'd be like, you just gotta be
So
yourself, man.
great. So great. It was, great having this conversation with you. And thank you for sparing the time coming to this podcast, share your thought process. I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for tuning into another episode of Prolific Perspectives. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with David. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time.